right? These are proven use cases that we have implemented with other customers. We're going to go through 6, and then we're going to show these in action and show how this actually works in practice. So let's start with the first. There's a source of truth. Where do we know that the real information lives? How can I manage that? How can I version that? How can I make sure that I'm going to the right place? So making sure that we're keeping that information in the right place, that we have a single source of truth. We're able to link the accounts together so that we can quickly go from one to the other when we need to see that information in a different light. We're going to look at the process documentation and be able to capture that information that we have inside of our GRC, but also looking at it in visual ways through Blueworks and Process Mining. We're going to talk about automated discovery, so being able to actually pull information from running systems and from log files and from transactions and be able to build that process automatically. We're going to do what Bob just mentioned, which is how do we know that the way we think it works is the way that it is working, or the way that it should work is the way that it's actually operating, and making sure that we're staying within conformance, because it will be different, but how different is going to make a difference, and making sure that we're staying within the bounds of what we want to do. And that takes us to our 6th use case, where we're going to talk about ongoing monitoring. So let's run through these really quick, and then we're going to bring up the live demo. So this source of truth idea, I have risks and controls inside of OpenPages. I also want to expose those risks and controls inside of my process mapping platform in Blueworks Live. How do I do that? Easy. We integrate, right? And so within OpenPages, we have this concept where we're capturing and building these risks and controls, and you can see on the bottom there we have the list of all the 1,500 different risks that we've documented. I can push that information directly into Blueworks and make that a read-only glossary term that I can then attach to those process maps. That's extremely valuable, and we are not allowed to add new risks inside of Blueworks. We have to pull from that list. We have to use that information, but it's going to be up to date, and that timing could be instantaneous. That could be every 30 seconds if we wanted to be. So it's a really kind of real-time feed of the risk information and the details, and we're using that inside of Blueworks Live. We can also link the accounts together, and what I mean by this is once you've documented a process inside of Blueworks, how do I know what process that is actually going to be in OpenPages, and how do I quickly go from OpenPages into Blueworks in order to view that process in a more graphical way? You can see in this view where we are documenting this process P01, and we are able to look at that folder structure, look at the space structure, and we can replicate that inside of Blueworks Live, right? That allows us to have that same folder structure, the same tags, the same process name, and we can then use that information, document the process, and then link that process inside of OpenPages. So you can see it. I know it's small, but we'll show this in real life where we've actually created a permalink to that process. So if we are in OpenPages and we need to get into that process map, we can quickly jump from one tool to the other. So that's a very nice way to do the documentation, the mapping in the right tool, but we can always go back and forth, right? And we're actually looking at ways that we can do this in an even more integrated way where we could embed certain functionality inside of the tool. The new API that IBM released a couple weeks ago for Blueworks Live is really opening the door to a number of new use cases that we're exploring with our clients. All right, we'll talk now about the automated discovery feature. So imagine if in OpenPages, I have lists of risk events and audit history and all this information that I could put to use and put into action using IBM Process Mining. So if we're able to pull that information, pull that data, and attach basically a minimum of 3 links, an activity name, a timestamp, and some kind of correlation ID to bring those together. And it will automatically, within seconds, build that process for me and let me dig into that and do things like root cause analysis and different kinds of visualization and analytics, as well as simulation. And I can start to really understand not only what the process looks like, but why it behaves the way it does. And then conformance, right? We've modeled something in Blueworks. How do I know that it's actually running the right way? So I'm pulling, again, this is kind of the 3 legs of the stool. Now we're talking about going from Blueworks, importing that process map into Process Mining to overlay with the information that we've captured from OpenPages and understand where the difference is and why are there differences and are they going to be important differences or not. And then lastly is the ongoing monitoring, right? Using Process Mining to really uncover real-time information that's happening inside of our process so I can know if I'm actually going outside of SLAs or if I'm hitting certain metrics that I shouldn't be, and all that information that was documented inside of Blueworks. All right, let's get to the demo. All right. While I bring this up, I do want to quickly highlight again, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, that there's a Q&A in the webinar main room. So please do post some questions there. We will leave time for questions. Again, we'll probably wrap up about 1/4 so we can spend the rest of the time going through questions. Okay, so now let's bring up our demo environment. So I'm going to start with OpenPages. And OpenPages, again, is a very powerful process or a risk management tool where we can capture some of this information. And what I want to show is some of the integration that we've built into this OpenPages model. All right, so again, I have my dashboard. I'm coming in as a process owner. I can start to look at different information in here. And the one that I'm going to focus in on in this demo is this P01 process, right? I'm going to click into this. This is just, for simplicity, I just named it P01. But we're going to see some details about the process that we want to mimic in Blueworks Live, right? So some of the information that we see here, if I scroll down, I can see some things like how critical is the process. I can look at my risk and control information and see all of the risks that are appearing in that process. I can look at what we call process charts. These are basically heat maps of where we see different kinds of inherent versus impact or inherent impact, and then the residual likelihood, the residual impact, right? All this information is useful for really digging into the process. And then I have the concept of a process map. Now, this is the visual that we get in OpenPages. Very useful, so I can see the activity names, I can see the different information. It just does not look like a process as we would understand it coming from a Blueworks Live background, right? So there are some things that we could pull from this and perhaps automatically generate the process inside of Blueworks Live. And I've done that. So now what I can do is right from OpenPages, I've embedded a link that we can go and jump into our Blueworks Live environment. And my account timed out, so I'm just going to log in again. But it's going to be very seamless, where we can go from one view into the other, and I can now go and see the process map. We do see that the hierarchy is the same, so we can maintain that hierarchy of the process. We also see that the tags are the same, so looking at the different tags, audit, BCP, ORM. And then within that, I can go in and start adding the risks and controls directly here. Because they're being fed from OpenPages, I can go and choose those risks and controls and see that they are not editable, right? They are going to be something that I have to pick from a dropdown, and I can add as many as I want, but I'm not able to add new risks. I have to do that in the right tool, which is OpenPages, right? And as I make changes here, that link, since we have a permalink coming from OpenPages, that's going to remain the same. And it goes both ways, right? We have bidirectional integration. As I create new process maps inside of OpenPages, it will automatically generate those in Blueworks, and then I have to go into Blueworks and actually create those. So that link is an automatic link that's created when I create this process in OpenPages. Of course, the actual documentation needs to take place inside of Blueworks Live. All right, now let's talk about process mining. So there's a couple of different angles here. The one that we found really interesting is the ability to go and pull data from OpenPages directly. And so I've done that with what we call risk events. So if I bring this up, we see, bringing this up again. There we go. So these are risk events pulled directly from Blueworks, and they're useful right now in this view because I can kind of see the different reporting But going all the way down, we have thousands of these risk events that occurred. How do I visualize that in an actual process? And so we're going to use Blueworks Process Mining to do that here. So let's go ahead and bring up IBM Process Mining. And I'm going to create a new process. We'll just call this my OpenPages risk events. And I'm going to open that same file that we just had. And so we can create the process through a number of different ways. We can do it through how I'm doing it here, where I'm importing in kind of a batch mode and assigning different fields to that. We can also do this in an ongoing basis. And that's where I think the real power of process mining starts to come into play, is not just discovery, not just initial analysis, but the ongoing monitoring and understanding what kind of impact certain changes, such as adding controls to a process, would have on the overall flow. So here, I'm just going to add a couple of field mappings just for the sake of the demo. We have a status that can be our activity name. So a status change can be considered an activity. We have the start time or start date, the occurrence date. That'll be our start time. And we can add other details too, but right now I'm just going to add that the location and the area is going to be our ID, our unique correlation. Now I'm picking this one kind of arbitrarily. You can pick other IDs, right? It could be a risk event ID, or it could be a location ID, or it could be a department ID. All of those could be used for that mapping. But in our case, we're just going to use those three fields for the sake of the demo. And this is going to build the process for us right in front of us, right? So here's the process that was created. Now, again, we had about 1,400 different actual events that translated into 21 unique cases, right? Because we are using the geography plus the department as our kind of map there. And it's not just about viewing the process and understanding it. And in this case, we see the heat map being frequency. We can change the heat map to be rework, duration, cost. If we start associating cost with resources. But what I can do here is really dig into possibly the rejected status and seeing some of the different pieces of information in terms of how this breaks down, right? What different processes are feeding into that? What, how many are, more are coming from the Asia Pacific retail banking area. But the more information, the more data that I add to that mapping, the better this analysis is going to be. And then I can also view this as a BPMN. So if I turn this on its side, I can start to understand why it goes down certain paths. We can see all the gateways, both the splits and the joins that were added here. I can start to go in and say, do some rule discovery to see certain patterns, certain issues that are happening within the process itself, and really starting to break down the reason why it goes from one step to another. And so just digging into that, we don't have a lot of data that we've added here, but you get the idea that we can start to really do some root cause. And then the ongoing monitoring is a big piece as well. So understanding as this is happening, all of the different variations, all of the different possibilities of that process, and even digging into certain events that have happened. So clicking into one and seeing what flow did the North America Agent Services, I didn't like that one. We'll pick a different one. Yeah, I don't know why that's not working, but you get the idea that we can kind of dig into each instance and see the flow that one instance took. Okay, so coming back over, I did want to throw out one other honorable mention here, which is our add-on tool, Blueworks Insights. Within Blueworks Insights, we're able to add additional reporting and kind of bridging the gap between the different pieces. This adds a lot of value in terms of having the marriage of the information we're capturing in OpenPages with the information we're capturing in both Blueworks Live and gathering from process mining and being able to do things like risk matrices and additional charts and graphics. This is a free add-on that we provide to our Blueworks Live customers.